Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be ranking all 40 mutations in the game right now. Put them in the tier list so you guys know which ones to, well, I would say necessarily avoid when you're wanting to push, and the ones that you must absolutely push before mutations actually get removed from the game, because it's only a limited time event. So you want to be abusing this because these mutations are actual playable on ladder, so you can gain trophies with them. You can get rank 30s, rank 35, etc. And some of them are just so insanely broken. So make sure you're subscribed if you're not already, because I'll be doing a bunch of mutation gameplay and tips on the channel this week. Without further ado, let's jump into it then. So we're going to be starting off with an F tier brawler, one of the worst mutations in the game with Penny. All she does is she gets an additional turret with her mutation. It still takes Penny 5 shots to get her super, and the turrets more than likely will shoot at the same time, so it's pretty easy to avoid it, and it's not really toxic at all. Next up in the F tier, it's Leon. So all Leon does with his mutation, he spawns 2 clones when Leon uses a super, which is just absolutely terrible because you want to be kind of sneaky and invis, but as soon as you see 2 clones, you know that Leon's gone invis, and the clones aren't going to do anything anyway, so this mutation is absolutely horrible. So lastly in the F tier, we have Belle's mutation. So whenever Belle hits an opponent, it will split off into 5 different projectiles. This doesn't increase Belle's DPS whatsoever. It will make it so it's more likely that it will split off to multiple opponents, but it's very rare that it's going to get any value. Really disappointed in this mutation. So now moving on to the D tier, starting off with Mandy. So with her mutation, it will split off another 2 sugar rays, so going into like a 3 direction, just like Jean's hypercharge. This seems really cool, but in reality it's never really going to hit more than 1 person, and then sometimes this actually leads to more inaccuracy. I can only see this being good if mutations are allowed in 5v5 maybe, but everywhere else it's not really going to be good whatsoever. Next up we have Surge's mutation. So whenever Surge uses a super, he'll go straight up to the maximum level, and he'll keep that for the rest of the game. So this seems like a good one, but at the same time Surge doesn't get any more stat boosts, while some of the other brawlers with mutations get some absolutely crazy stat boosts and changes, and this one's just a bit bland. Squeak's mutation again is pretty lackluster. Whenever he uses his super, each of those explosions will be like a main attack squeak, so it will cover more radius, but it doesn't get an increased damage. It doesn't get an increased supercharge rate or anything like that, so again, pretty lackluster. Next up in the D tier, we have Grom's mutation. So whenever he throws out his super, it will add an additional 4 projectiles onto that super, so that seems really cool. It looks really cool visually, but you're not actually dealing more damage. The only good thing about it is that you get an increased supercharge, but again, you don't get increased damage from this, so I don't really see the point in it. Lastly in the D tier, we have Buzz's mutation. So his super range is increased by a lot. The range is about, I would say, from side to side of the map, which seems pretty cool, but it's actually hard for Buzz to get his super, and without a stun super, it's not really going to be that effective. Now moving on to the C tier brawlers, starting off with Lola. So she gets another ego with her, but it's just really weird in placement. If they were placed side by side, it would be really good and pretty toxic, but it's a bit all over the place. You might be able to get some good plays with the Sealed with a Kiss star power, but I just feel like there's better options with the mutations. So next up in the C tier, we have Shelly's mutation. So Shelly shoots her shotgun twice, which is actually really strong with the clay pigeons gadget. You just melt people, but once you run out of those gadgets, it's not really as effective, so I'd say C tier is pretty fair for it. Next up in the C tier, we have Rose's mutation. So whenever she pops her super, she'll just throw out a bunch of bushes around her. The radius of these bushes is actually insane, but I just feel like it's gonna be hard for Rosa to even get her super, especially in this mutation modifier, and also with all the supercharge rate nerfs in the past, I just don't think it's going to be as effective as it probably would have. So next up in the C tier, we have Frank's mutation. So Frank actually gets 3 buffs. He moves faster, he has more health, and he can break walls, but still he's got this delay where other brawlers with better mutations can just abuse him really easily. At least he's going to be really annoying with the amount of HP and fast movement speed, but he's not really going to confirm kills easily. Next up in the C tier, we have Crow's mutation. So his main attack will actually return to him, which I think is a little bit stronger than most people realize. This could easily be like B tier, maybe even A tier, because you're essentially doubling the damage of the daggers overall. This will allow him to get more supers and allow him to cycle through some more hypercharges, but again, I think there's just better mutations out there. Lastly in the C tier, we have Brock's mutation. So with this mutation, he shoots out an extra rocket with every main attack. This can be really good in game mode like Heist, for example, but I still feel like Brock's rockets are still pretty easy to avoid. So now moving on to the B tier, starting off with Sprout's mutation. So he just gets an extra shot shot as well with every piece of ammo, so you shoot out 2 sprout shots every single time. This can be really effective in some situations, but I feel like the meta mutation brawlers will still counter him too easily. So with the B tier, we have Piper's mutation, so just like Brock and Sprout, she'll get an extra shot with her main attack. The reason why it's a little bit better than the other two is because this pairs really well with Snappy Sniping, also pairs really well with the homemade recipe gadget, so I feel like Piper actually might be a little bit better than we believe. Pam's mutation is infinite ammo, so this seems really good, but it's actually hard to get consistent damage with Pam because her main attack is so spread out, but if you're really close to an opponent, you can deal a lot of damage. Next up in the B tier, we have Janet's mutation, so whenever Janet uses her super, it will drop way more bombs and you get an increased supercharge rate as well. So I think this could be one of the underrated ones, mainly because her super damage recently got buffed and it just says way more bombs, so that could be double the bombs, triple the bombs. It feels like it's actually really strong and the super cycling looks insane. Next up in the B tier, we have Colt's mutation, so whenever Colt just shoots, he breaks terrain, which seems pretty strong. I think in a 1v1 though, Colt is still pretty easy to counter. He also gets an increased range as well, so does his super. I feel like in some situations, especially heists, this could be pretty broken. Next up in the B tier, we have Bo's mutation, so he gets infinite mines. It doesn't matter how many throws out at the same time, they will forever stay on the map until the enemy triggers them, which actually can be pretty toxic. He gets an increased supercharge rate as well. I feel like, again, this one could be pretty slept on. I just feel like other brawlers though will just get more from their main attack, whilst Bo, you have to wait for the super. Next up in the B tier, we have Bonnie's mutation, so whenever Bonnie shoots, she'll shoot an additional 2 projectiles, and then with her super as well, she will stun the opponent. So I feel like Bonnie might be pretty slept on because once you pop Sugar Rush, she can actually deal an insane amount of damage. Next we have B's mutation, so whenever B shoots out any shot, a rattled hive will spin around her. So essentially with B, you want to be shooting all the time and you'll always have these bees rotating around you. Imagine that paired with a rattled hive gadget as well. I feel like this could be pretty toxic and just lead to the opponents never regenerating their health. Lastly in the B tier, we have Ash's mutation. So again, I think this one could be underrated because essentially Ash will spawn so many little rats. I think double, maybe even triple the amount. This can really amplify the amount of rage he gets. He'll basically always be fully raged up, so he'll be super speedy and dealing a lot of damage, and he also gets an increased supercharge rate as well. So again, people might sleep on Ash. Now moving on to the A tier, starting off with Angelo. So he'll get an additional 2 projectiles onto his main attack. This can be very deadly. He deals the most damage in the game pretty much, and adding more projectiles to this is just insane. Imagine this stacked on top of poison as well. In 5v5, this could be absolutely broken. With Gray's mutation, he can actually have 6 teleports at the same time, so essentially 3 supers. I think this one's going to be absolutely crazy in some game modes, especially like Hot Zone, Heist. You can constantly send in an El Primo, a Hank onto the enemy side of the map. This one has potential to be insane. 6 hypercharge is going to be super strong. When he uses his super, it will split off to another 2 heads. So 3 tick heads raining down on the opponents. It's just crazy. The super cycling will be insane. And imagine once tick gets hypercharge, 3 hypercharge heads running at you, and especially with all the mines exploding, this has potential to even be S tier. So next up in the A tier, we have El Primo's mutation. So essentially his super will have a faster traveling time. He also gets an increased HP and increased super charge rate. So this is just crazy. El Primo's got one of the best supers in the game. If he could just keep cycling them and just keep spamming out as fast as possible, again, this one could easily be S tier. Next we have Poco's mutation. So whenever Poco gets hit, he will spit out like a tuning fork, healing him and his allies around him. The percentages are quite weak, but at the same time, if Poco can just keep spamming heals like crazy, I don't see how he's going to die. Next up in the A tier, we have Nita's mutation. So Nita will throw out another Bruce Bear with her super, which seems pretty good already just to waste the opponent's ammo. But imagine this with the hypercharge. 2 10k HP Bruce Bears, which have an increased movement speed. They're just going to be running you down. She's going to be insane in the mutation modifier. Next up in the A tier, we have Max's mutation. So Max has infinite ammo. It's better than Pam's mutation because Max has a way better unload speed and has way better burst potential. You also just got the charging with the super as well. You're just going to be flying around the map. This is just perfect for Max. Next up in the A tier, we have Gale's mutation. So Gale's main attack is probably like double the width, which is just absolutely crazy. You essentially can never miss an opponent, which is so bizarre. Also with the freezing snow star power, you're going to be constantly slowing the opponent as well. People are going to be sleeping on this mutation. And lastly, in the A tier, we have Rico's mutation. Mutations. So Rico's projectiles will bounce further. So what you want to be doing with this mutation is just shoot walls infinitely with the reload gear as well, and he'll just be bouncing across the map. I think it's going to be a lot better on more passive game modes, because you can essentially just go in one particular spot and just spam out shots so much, and the more it bounces, the further it will travel, and they'll just never be able to regen with when you're facing off against a Rico. Now moving on to the S tier mutations, starting off with Melody's mutation. She gets an additional 2 notes orbiting around her, and her notes will last longer. So that's more DPS with Melody. It's a lot easier to get more consistent damage, and you can also switch to the perfect pitch gadget and just make them spin around her really fast. You're just going to deal so much damage over time, and I think people don't really realize how strong this mutation is. Next up in the S tier, we have Hank's mutation, and Hank could actually be the best brawler in the game with this mutation. Whenever Hank gets hit, he will throw out his torpedoes, so Milk will just fly everywhere, but literally he will deal an insane amount of damage, especially against brawlers with a lot of projectiles. He's just going to be spraying supers everywhere. He doesn't get the additional healing that he gets with his normal super, but he's still going to be crazy. Imagine that paired with the shield gadget as well. He's going to be able to tank so much and just deal so much damage to the opponents. Next up in the S tier, we have Stu's mutation. So he gets infinite supers, so he can just gas the heal around the map and just basically be unkillable, which is crazy. I feel like there's going to be a lot of toxic Stu plays. Like, how can you kill Stu if he's just healing all the time? You've also got some toxic things about him as well, that you can just spam super into a wall and just heal up from like one shot to full HP within a couple of seconds, which is just crazy. The kind of spam potential with this brawler is going to be so cheesy. Next up in the S tier, we have Spike's mutation. So with Spike's main attack, it will like double the amount of needles that are thrown out, and this actually pairs with curveballs, so you literally cannot dodge Spike's main attack. It will just deal so much damage over time. It's going to be so toxic. Next we have Meg's mutation. So this one again will be very slept on, because Meg as a brawler isn't really too fun to play, but the mutation adds an additional 2 projectiles to her main attack, so she will literally just rip through players. You can't dodge her main attack now. She'll just rip through people. The DPS is going to go through the roof with Meg. So next up in the S tier, we have Ruff's mutation. So they add an extra projectile onto his main attack, so he'll shoot out 3 lasers and it will bounce longer. So again, it might seem boring because Ruff's is a support brawler, but the damage consistency is just going to be absolutely insane. You think of any passive map and you can just never miss with Ruff. Next up in the S tier, we have Eve's mutation. So whenever Eve gets hit, she will spawn out some hatchlings. So just like Hank, it's probably going to be more toxic, but at the same time, Eve is quite weak, so I'm not too sure whether I might overrate this one. But at the same time, if you're facing a brawler that shoots a lot of projectiles, so it's just going to be Eve hatchlings everywhere. Final brawler on this list, and I think by far the best mutation coming with the update, is Carl's mutation. So whenever he uses his super, he will literally fly across the map in lightning speed, literally like 2 seconds. I'm not even joking. How can you hit this brawler? He'll just rip through people so fast. I think they'll have to emergency nerf this one, because it'll be so broken that you'll need a Carl in your composition every single time. And not only that, his main attack pickaxe is faster, so there's just so many buffs with Carl. I think it's going to be the best brawler in the mutation modifier by far. Make sure you abuse him as much as possible if you get him hunt locked. So that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Make sure to abuse the S tier mutations as much as possible. Maybe they might do some balance changes with this if some of them are too toxic, so I'll just push them as high as possible once, especially if they're broken. So that's going to be it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.